vocabulary. You've just got to have a good vocabulary to say it well. Vocabulary. We can only translate for other people with the tools called vocabulary. If you're lacking in vocabulary, then you're lacking in tools to describe some problem or some answer. Words, vocabulary. You can't communicate without them. And you can't communicate well without a defined vocabulary. Every time you come across a word that's new to you, what should you do? Look it up. Every time you're in a conversation and the other person uses a word that's new to you, look it up. Now, most of the time you can figure out the meaning of a new word by how it's used. But if you can't, make sure you hold your response until you know for sure. Several years ago, some of my friends took a survey among prisoners, some rehabilitation program they were working on. And they weren't looking for this, but here's what they found. There's definitely a relationship between vocabulary and behavior. Interesting. This is what they found. The more limited the vocabulary, the more the tendency to poor behavior. Wow. When you stop to think about it for a moment, it makes sense. Vocabulary is a way of seeing. It gives us insight, and only with your present vocabulary can you see. You can't use tools you don't have to see, to create light, understanding, awareness, comprehension, perception, vision. You can only have as much vision as your present vocabulary will give you. And if you're limited in vocabulary, then you can't see very well. What if a person could only see the world through a little tiny hole? Can you imagine the mistakes he'd make in judgment? He'd say, here's how it is. You'd say, no, that's not how it is. Here's how it is. The guy says, but I can't see it. How come he can't see it? He doesn't have the vocabulary to understand the translation. Now, vocabulary is also what we use as a tool to express what's going on in our heart, what's going on in our head. Translate our questions, translate our answers, our perceptions, what we see, to be able to say it. And I'm telling you, if you have a limited way of translating and expressing what's going on in your heart and what's going on in your head, you'll fall way behind. So you'd have twin problems without a good vocabulary. Number one, you wouldn't be able to see. Number two, you wouldn't be able to express. And your world would keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, not having the vision, not having the tools. Finally, you wouldn't need a place much bigger than 10 by 12 to live. Why? That's about as big as some people's world is. That's all they've got, this little narrow world. Making mistakes every day. Why? They can't see. Getting it wrong every day. They can't comprehend. They can't understand. No tools with which to translate. For good communication, number one is having something good to say. Number two is saying it well. And number three is reading your audience. You've got to read what's going on between you and the people you're talking to. Should you say what you're saying a little softer? Should you say it a little stronger? Should you explain it more? Should you be more clear and concise? Should you quit? A lot of the decision-making that's going on during a conversation with someone depends on how well you can read, how well you can tell what's going on in the minds of those you're trying to reach. Doesn't matter if you're looking into the face of a child or the face of a colleague or 1,000 faces in an audience. You've got to read what's going on. You've got to pay attention. So let me give you some ways to read. The first one is you've got to read what you see. You've got to read what you see. Search the face of a child and see if you're coming across. See if they look perplexed. See if they're getting it. See if they can't get it. Body language tells us a lot. Look at how the people you're talking to are sitting. what they are doing with their hands, their eyes. A guy's got his arms crossed, legs crossed, chin tucked down and frowning. You've got your work cut out for you. This guy's not going to be easy to reach. The lady's standing up from behind her desk. You've got to hurry. She's not going to listen to much more. You've probably got to pick up the pace and get down to it. So the first one is read what you see. Here's the second one. Read what you hear. You've got to be a good listener to be a good communicator. Get some feedback. Listen. To be a good parent, you've got to be a good listener. To talk well, you've got to listen well. That's so valuable. Get the feedback. Now what you hear may help you change gear. Be a little stronger. Be a little softer. Find a different illustration. This one isn't working. Search for another way to say it. Become sensitive to someone else's words, not just by preparing to talk when the other person's through. Listen. Pick up those signals that the feedback of words gives us. Now, here's the third way to read your audience, and that is to read how you feel. Emotional signals. You've got to learn to pick those up. Pick up those feelings. Women just seem to have this part built in. Men can learn it, but women haven't. Woman says it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Man says, what does that mean? It doesn't feel right. She says it's something. He says something, something. What is this something? She says, I'm telling you, something doesn't feel right. Now, men can learn it, but women haven't. Learn to read your emotion. Learn to read what others are feeling so you can adjust your communication.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away. As you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then baby I have a taste. All the highs and the lows, no you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change I need today. I promise that I've never felt this way. I really hope that you will choose to stay through all the pain.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away. As you fade away. As you fade away. And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray.
So you can adjust your approach, so you can get your message across, so you can communicate well. Communication, having something to say and saying it well. Communication is one of the key ingredients in being able to work well with others, in being able to build our ambition by working well with others. Now that we've talked about some basic communication skills, you need to understand how best to apply them. What you can do and cannot do in the marketplace. How you talk and act while playing volleyball on a Saturday afternoon probably isn't the same as how you'd talk and act around a group of people who want to invest in your company. How you communicate with your old friends and family members is probably an abbreviated version of how you should communicate in a high-powered business setting. When you meet a new group of people, you must watch and listen and be alert before you decide on the appropriate communication style. You might greet old friends with a slap on the back and a tasteless joke, but but you certainly wouldn't greet a multi-million-dollar opportunity that way. You must take a few moments to study the temperament of your audience. Listen to how they communicate with each other. Watch how they react to situations and comments. Study your audience, lest you engage in some behavior that will prove inappropriate and costly. Some people would make about $150,000 a year, but they have to be satisfied with about 50 because their behavior is costing them the rest of it. They've got the skills, but their behavior is costing them. Keep setting them aside. So let's talk about some of those things in the marketplace that might cost you more than you want to pay. Here's one: bad language. You've got to be careful with language in the marketplace. You've got to be careful here. Some language is more appropriate for the bar. So what should you do? Leave it in the bar. Or else what? You'll have to pay the consequences. We must all be students of consequences. Things that cost us, and language is one of the most important ones to consider. Language in the marketplace. Now, if you cuss and tell dirty jokes in the marketplace, that's acceptable to who? Other people in the marketplace who cuss and tell dirty jokes. You've got no problem with them. Matter of fact, they'll probably enjoy having you around. But if you cuss and tell dirty jokes to those who'll be offended, then what? They certainly won't want to have you around. And what happens then? It'll cost you. Next one, being late. In some circles it's acceptable, but I'm telling you, most people view being late as being disrespectful. Disrespectful of their time. And if they feel that you're disrespectful of their time, they'll also feel you're disrespectful of their business. Why? Because everything affects everything. Now, if you have a legitimate excuse and your reputation already says that you're punctual, then you might get away with it a time or two. But be careful about being late. One day you just may be too too late to close the deal. Be on time. You've also got to be careful about using inside lingo on the outside world. Your industry's buzzwords are just that. Your industries. Be careful not to use this terminology on the outside. People who speak computer language, they've got to learn to shift gears when they go out into the open marketplace. So watch your lingo. Remember to shift gears from the inside lingo to the outside world. You've got to become a good judge of character. Why? To protect yourself. There are shepherds, and there are sheep, and there are wolves. And we must be wise and understand that some wolves are so clever, they've learned to dress up like sheep. But do not miss the story of the full drama of life called good and evil. Awareness, sensitivity, understanding, knowing the scenario and being on alert for what is called the inevitable.